Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. Today is the new moon day, December 14th, and this afternoon we had a ceremony, and the 8 precepts were determined by now Anagārika Philippe. So we have one more Anagārika in our community. And so I thought I would offer some reflections on that commitment and what we mean by Anagārika and how that principle relates to Dhamma and to our practice. Well, the word Anagārika literally means a homeless one, or one who has left the household life, one without a house, and so it's a change of state that we undertake, going from ordinary lay clothes into wearing white, shaving the head. Also, making the commitment to live by the 8 precepts. But if we reflect upon that word Dhamma, that word Anagārika, and think of it in terms of Dhamma, in many ways, it's a kind of formalizing of what's already the case. Because I would say that in actuality, none of us really have a home. None of us really have a house in the first place. That we say that we have a place where we live, or we have a sense of identification with a particular spot. But none of us really ever have a home. And so, in a way, that taking on the Anagārika precepts is a sort of formalizing of what's already the case in terms of Dhamma. I would suggest that ultimately none of us have a home, none of us have a place, none of us have an abiding in the sense world, in the conditioned realm. So that in many ways, taking on the Anagārika life is an aligning of this human condition with Dhamma, and that's in a sense the part of the principle of taking that on. I've always been very much inspired by the particular verse in the Dhammapada. I'm not sure exactly which number it is, but it begins, "The wise control themselves. They are not attached to any home. Like swans that abandon the lake, they leave home after home behind." The wise control themselves. They're not attached to any home. Like swans that abandon the lake, they leave home after home behind. I've always felt that's a very beautiful, very liberating principle that's there in that verse of the Dhammapada, because it's so easy for us to get attached to our space. I've lived in the kuti here at Amaravati for 10 years, and so I can easily think of it as my space. The familiarity that we have, the things that we like, the sense of comfort and homeliness, that can be something that's very sort of heartwarming and something very cherished. But just in that simple verse, in that principle, the wise control themselves. They're not attached to any home. So that in that very expression, the Buddha is saying it's a matter of control. if the mind is uncontrolled, then it keeps making homes. It keeps saying, this is my place, and how things should, need to be to make me happy and me comfortable, and how they should be. But those kind of homes, those kind of abidings are not reliable. And so, as he said, the wise control themselves. They're not attached to any home, like swans that abandon a lake, like a bird leaving a lake behind and flying off into the distance. It leaves it behind and doesn't look back. You leave it be. So in reflecting on the Anagārika life, it's that leaving those habits of worldly attachment, those sense of worldly belonging, and the identification with a particular spot, a particular place, a particular set of things, is consciously leaving that behind. In one of Luang Por Chah's most loved and wise and reflective teachings, he talks about our real home. He's giving advice to an aged disciple of his, coming to the end of her life, and my memory is that he's been invited to give a Dhamma talk to her as she's sort of lying on her deathbed, really, in her home. And he's giving advice to her, saying, this is not your real home, This house she probably had lived in for her whole life, and saying, these walls, this floor, this roof, this is not your real home. These pots and pans that you have in your kitchen, they're not really yours. This body that is so familiar to you, that you take so much to be who and what you are, that's not your real home either. And so these kind of reflections can be challenging because it feels like a loss or a threat, or don't take that away from me, or that's say upsetting or challenging, or it's threatening something in us. But what it's threatening is self-view. What it's threatening is the attachment to the body, the personality, to our familiar objects, to the things that we are say, accustomed to, the things that we take to be ours. This body, its form, its feelings, even the painful bits are still, it's still my pains. It's still got that sense of meanness and minus. And that is something that is deeply cherished in the ignorance, in the mind being unawakened. So that's a very wonderful and powerful teaching that Luang Por Chah gives in that Dhamma talk, our real home. And I feel that it's a good reflection for entering upon the Anagārika life, that it's to look at that sense of identification with our nationality, our story, where we come from, where I was born, where I grew up, what my room is at Amaravati, or my kuti is, and then even more close to home, my body, how we so easily take this body and this personality to be who and what we are. But that's the very root of self-view, of Sakkaya Ditthi, is that view. The Sakkaya Ditthi literally means the view of the real body. Sat, true or real, kaya, body, Ditthi, the view of the real body. So essentially that perception, I am the body, I am the personality, that's what I am. And how deep and how powerfully those habits of conditioning run. I am a man, I am English, I am so many years, I'm 64 years old, or I'm 25 years old, or 75 years old. I am French, I am Swiss, I am all those I ams. The taking on of the Anagārika life and these forms of renunciation that we have established in this tradition, the Anagārika, Samanera, the Bhikkhu, Silatara, Anagārika, being a committed upasika, a lay woman practitioner, upasaka, a lay layman practitioner. These forms are there. They're a framework for the mind to examine those habits of attachment and to challenge that, to say, well, is that so? And the Anagārika, the leaving the home behind, is a very, say, direct way of leaving self-view behind. So, and as I was saying earlier today during the ceremony for Philippe, how the home or the house is very much a symbol for the self, for the atta, and that when there's a conscious gesture of leaving the home behind, leaving the house behind, it's setting the intention to leave self-view behind, to establish the wise perspective on this feelings of atta, of I am, the ahankara, the I-making, mamankara, mind-making habits of mind, to really know those, feel those, sense those. And unless they're challenged, unless they're really looked at and explored, they just sort of carry on dominating and say, coloring the perceptions and the particular ideas and opinions and ways of seeing that the mind has. So they need to be examined, explored, and challenged. And this, and if they aren't, then they carry on and become the continuous cause for limitation, for dukkha. But we're consciously using the form of our lives, shaving the head every fortnight, the robes that we wear, the precepts that we take, that we remind ourselves of, and the meditation. These are all tools, skillful means that we use to bring our attention to the fact that this is not our real home. This body doesn't have an owner. This is not our real home. You can say, I've lived at Amaravati. Now I've lived at Amaravati 10 years. I lived here 10 years from 85 to 95. So I've lived here for 20 years altogether. Luang Por Sumedho even joked that he named it after me. So he didn't, I'm sure. When I first saw the name, when I came down, I was living up at Harnham. I came down to Chithurst. I think it was the Katina of 1983, and Ajahn Sucitto had made a nice poster of this new project that Luang Por Sumedho had launched of opening up this new Dhamma center. I'd heard rumors that this new place was beginning, and a few of us came down from Harnham for the Katina at Chithurst, and there was this nifty poster that Ajahn Sucitto had painted that was in the hallway, and it said, opening next year Amaravati, and I thought, oh. And I knew that Luang Por Sumedho had liked that name, Amaravati. I'd heard him mention it before. He talked about it as an ancient Buddhist city, and he loved the sound and the meaning of the word. And so I remember coming into the shrine room at Chithurst, and a lot of people were gathered there with Luang Por, and I paid my respects. And I said, "Oh, I see you launched the project for this new place." And he said, "Yes, and I named it after you." So, of course, I felt a bit flattered, but blushed as well. But I don't make any claims that he did actually name it after me, but it was a happy coincidence. But even if he did, it's still not my place. Even if I've been the abbot here for 10 years, it's still, it's not my real home. And others of us have lived here even longer. Some of the long-term lay residents have been here for many, many more than 10 years, but still, it's even if we've been parked on this particular patch of the planet, it's not our real home. And we take a reflection like that to hold that up and to explore those feelings. Yeah, but it is my home. I do belong here. Where am I going to go if I can't be here? Don't send me away. I want to be here. That's why we take these reflections, that this is not our real home, because it helps to examine, to explore those feelings of, this is my place, I've got to be here, I can't be anywhere else. And to say, oh yes, is that so? Is that a fact? Will the world stop turning if this human being doesn't live or spend most of their time in this particular spot? Will it? will the Dhamma cease to be if this particular human doesn't carry on being based at this particular spot on the planet? I don't think so. In particular, the body, our physical body, is something that we take as our real home, as an abiding, as a gara, and that maybe not as a concept, or maybe the idea of, oh yeah, I can see, this isn't me, this isn't mine. But then, particularly when it's sick or when it's in pain, then it really feels like, I'm sick, or I hurt. Ow! There's a sense of identification. It's not a concept. So maybe on the conceptual level, we can say, yes, the body is not self. I can see it's all made up of changing biological forms, and none of that is really me or mine. But when there's a pain in your leg, where you have a searing headache, or you start to have a cough, and you think, oh no, I've got coronavirus. It's hit me at last. Right there, those feelings of I and me and mine are suddenly are very apparent, very very real, very very solid. And so these reflections on say not being the owner, not having an abiding place. It's not just a concept, it's not just an idea, but it's, say, these very, very deep-seated instinctual habits of owning, I am the body, this is my pain, I am sick, I have to worry about my health, I have got to deal with this is me, it is mine. So there's a non-conceptual, instinctual, powerful emotions, instinctual pulls on the heart that impact the citta. And our practice and the use of the meditation and wise reflection in particular are the most helpful and wonderful tools that can be used to explore that, to challenge that, to raise that up. Is this our real home? Is this, if it is, and what is it that's doing the owning? If this body is really mine, if this is really who and what I am, what is it that knows it? What is it that owns it? How can any aspect of this being really own anything? How is anything actually owned? In that teaching of Luang Por Chah's, then what he points out is that really the house is not a refuge, the body is not a refuge, but what is a refuge is Dhamma. And so that our real home really is Dhamma, I would say. That's what the real home is, that the Dhamma as nature, and that when when the view changes from a self-centered perspective to a nature-centered perspective, when it's genuinely seen and known moment by moment that this body is an aspect of nature, coming and going and changing, transforming continually according to the laws of nature, these mind states, liking, disliking, comfort, discomfort, excitement, depression, sleepiness, energy, that these are aspects of nature, then I would say then that is the flavor of the real home, if such a way of speaking is useful. But the Dhamma is our real home. That the more that this life, this body, this mind, and every aspect of this being is known as an aspect of nature, then that's where security lies. That's a really safe harbor. That's a really secure refuge. That's why we call the Buddha Dhamma Sangha the three refuges. A refuge is a safe place. It is a real home. It is a protection from the storm. It is what helps to be a shelter and a safe place amidst the storms that life presents. And so that when we are able to establish that. We use the practice, these, say, the forms of shaving the head, wearing the robes, keeping the precepts, the different aspects of spiritual training that we undertake, these different particular structures. They're there to support that insight that the mind is Dhamma, the body is Dhamma. Every aspect of this life is really an aspect of nature. There's no attribute of body or mind that is not part of the natural order. And so we think of this mind as, as a person. I feel, I think, I remember, I choose. I'm giving a Dhamma talk. I'm hearing my own words. I'm feeling the body's weight on the cushion of the Dhamma seat. That all those seem to be a me. I'm thinking of what to say. I'm choosing words. I'm speaking in English. This seems to be so much a kind of a set of personal choices. I am doing this. I am feeling this. I am experiencing this. And so the mind really looks like an I. It really feels like there is this agent, this individual entity that is the doer, the one who is experiencing, the one who is choosing. And yet, when we take these reflections and develop the insight into not self, it's seen really that every aspect of the mind, that which is experiencing, that which is knowing, is an aspect of nature. The capacity to choose, choosing words, choosing to shift your posture, choosing to open your eyes, close your eyes, that the quality of intention is also part of nature. The ability to understand language, to hear sound, these are all aspects of nature. And so when, at least in the practice as I've experienced it and developed it, the more that the mind recognizes that these are aspects of nature, that the mind is not a person. The citta is not a person. The citta is Dhamma. The citta is an aspect of nature. It's Dhamma jati, born of the Dhamma. It's a quality of Dhamma. Then there's a great spaciousness and ease, and that profound security of what Luang Por Chah calls our real home. That is the safe refuge, the genuine, reliable protection, that which is invulnerable, inviolable, unshakable. One of the aspects of the 8 precepts that is related to this very closely, that I like to emphasize, is how the 8 precepts and the structure of the basic renunciate life is a way of embodying the pure heart, or evoking the pure heart, and aligning one's actions and speech with the pure heart. There's a particular teaching called the Uposatha Sutta that I like to quote, and many of you have heard me quoting this. I haven't learned to memorize it in precise detail. Maybe I should do at a certain point. But the basic principle of it is the Buddha is speaking about the 8 precepts and their basis as the enlightened mind. And he's talking about the nature of the arahant and the behavior, the choices of an arahant. And is talking about the uposatha, the moon days, and the moon day observance for the lay community. So the sutta it says something like, and the Buddha is speaking about this, establishing a form of conduct, a form of observance for these moon days. And he says, all their lives, from the time of enlightenment until the passing away, till the end of their life, an arahant never deliberately takes the life of another living being. wouldn't it be a useful thing for members of the lay community to undertake this same way of being, and in that way they will be living as the arahants do, and that will be for their long-lasting welfare and happiness. All their lives, from the time of enlightenment until the parinibbana, an arahant never takes what is not given to them. They never steal. They never take what is not given. Wouldn't it be a good thing for the lay community to undertake that mode of conduct for this Moon Day observance? And in that way, they will be living as the arahants do, and that will be for their long-lasting welfare and happiness. And so too with each of the 8 precepts. So that they are say, an arahant never engages in sexual activity of any kind. And wouldn't it be a useful thing for the lay community on this day, one day a week, to be observing this same mode of behavior, and in that way they'll be living as the arahants do. So with all of the 8 precepts that Philippe took so impeccably this afternoon, it was word perfect. So I'm happy for that to be recorded for the universe, and that, I feel, is really a helpful and important way to understand the precepts. So the Anagārika is also for those of us with more precepts, the Sila Dhara, the bhikkhus, samaneras. But the basis of the precepts is the awakened mind, the enlightened mind. And so that what you're doing is rather than looking at the 8 precepts as don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, and setting these sort of limitations or boundaries around what I would like to do or what I should be able to do, but I'm giving up, and looking at sort of the mode of life of a homeless one as a set of losses, like that renunciation. The very word renunciation in English is a word that carries a sense of going without, doing without something that is rightfully yours. It's a sacrifice. You're like what in the Christian tradition. What are you giving up for Lent? You give up things that you like as a sort of sacrifice. And so renunciation in English has that connotation. It has that flavor to it of going without things that are reasonably or justifiably good, or that you think of as yours or part of your life, and so you're going without, and so there's a sense of being diminished, or a sense of lack that is being endured. But one of the terms that's used for the Anagārika life and the renunciate life is brahmacharya. So Brahma means pure or divine, like the Brahma gods. Charya is conduct or action. So, or to walk. Charity is to walk, or to go, to fare. So rather than having that same tone of renunciation as a sense of loss or lack or being diminished, rather the state of the monastic life as an Anagārika, as a samanera, Sila Dhara, as a bhikkhu, the connotation is one of living in a divine way, with divine conduct, walking with the gods. So it's a state of fullness, of brightness, of divinity, rather than a state of lack or kind of enduring a painful absence. Going without something that is usually yours, or that makes you feel like you're missing something, that you're diminished in some kind of a way. So I feel this is a very helpful and skillful and accurate way of looking at the holy life, the spiritual training that we undertake. That you're seeing that the basis of it is the awake mind. So that rather than say, I have to control my murderous impulses, or I have to control my desires to get things and take things, and so on and so forth. Rather, it's saying in our heart of hearts, there is that place in the heart that is completely incapable of violence, that cannot kill. There is that in the heart that is completely uninterested in sexual activity. There is that place in the heart that is unable to lie or to deceive, that is not interested in distraction and just being unmindful and carried away by entertainments and such like. There is that in the heart which rejoices in being awake, that doesn't want to just get lost in sleepiness and dullness and unconsciousness. So that it's really drawing upon the qualities of the pure heart, in your heart of hearts. So it's really helping us to live from our most sort of pure, the most pure place in the heart, our kind of the root of goodness in our heart. That's what we're learning to listen to. So taking on the precepts as an external form is helping us to listen to that in our heart of hearts, what's called the guna Dhamma, that quality of virtue, that love of the good in the heart, that is a quality of our own being. So you're setting the external form of the robes and the shaved head and the formal ceremony of determining the precepts. That's reminding you to listen to that, to your heart, what in your heart of hearts is like there at the kind of in the most cherished and most profound area of your being, in your heart of hearts. That's what there is that quality, there is that place in you that is completely honest, that is completely harmless, that is completely kind, that doesn't need anything. And so it's learning to live and encouraging us to live from that basis. And so it's not the case that if you shave your head and put on white robes, you suddenly become an arahant. There's no way. Is it that easy? And absolutely not. But what it's doing is helping to align your external behavior. Was that if you were an arahant, then you would be incapable of taking life. You would be incapable of stealing anything. You would be completely uninterested and incapable of any kind of sexual engagement. You couldn't tell a lie. You would be completely uninterested in intoxicants. You wouldn't be interested in eating all through the day, and whenever you had the impulse to chew or eat something, you wouldn't be interested in distraction, entertainment, adornment. You wouldn't be interested in sleeping your life away. And so that conscious establishment of the 8 precepts then is saying, if you were an arahant, this would be natural to you. So by adopting the behavior, it helps you as an individual to tap into that heart of hearts, that quality of the citta, where that kind of wisdom, that kind of clarity of understanding, those kind of noble attitudes are to be found, and helps us to not be guided and motivated by our more habitual impulses of taking what we want, or bending the truth for the sake of getting some kind of self-advantage, or telling a good story, or and being moved by greed or laziness or aggression or selfishness, jealousy, whatever it might be. There's also another sutta that is in a different part of the Anguttara Nikaya. The Uposatha Sutta is I think in the Book of the Eights in the Anguttara Nikaya, and in a different part of there's numerical discourses. There's another sutta where the Buddha talks about, in a very similar way, about the nature of an arahant. He talks about the things an arahant can't do. So he says it's impossible for an arahant, one who has sort of reached the end of the path, who's realized full and complete enlightenment. They cannot deliberately take life. They cannot steal. They cannot engage in sexual activity. They cannot lie. And then, interestingly enough, the fifth precept is not the fifth point that the Buddha makes in that teaching is not to do with intoxicants. But the fifth characteristic that an arahant cannot do is they cannot lay up a store. They can't collect things. Sort of keep an extra one for next week is not something that an arahant would do, which I have always found a very interesting little quirk of that teaching. So it's called. There's two suttas that are very, very similar side by side. I think the first one is called Suttawa, from the place where the sutta was given in Suttawa. So again, it's I feel helpful to see that it's not like when the mind is fully awake, when the heart is pure, it doesn't have to restrain any kind of aggressive impulses. It doesn't have to restrain the urge to lie or to take what's not given. It can't go there. Or like the tongue can't form a lie. It just the speech won't take shape. And I've always found that was a very interesting and so kind of wonderful quality of. And of how it works on a practical level. That if the heart is really awake, is really attuned to Dhamma and really embodying Dhamma, when the heart is awake to its own nature as Dhamma, then it can't motivate the taking of another life. It can't do that. It can't tell a lie. It can't form the speech that is not true. And that these are, I feel, are very important and significant things to reflect on. So that on a practical daily level, we're doing a lot of restraining. Like we deal with the arising of impulses based on habit and the conditioning of greed, hatred, and delusion. And each one of us has different patterns of conditioning and different urges, different different personal histories, different patterns of like and dislike, different conditioning, different habits. So certainly on an everyday level, there's a lot of restraining and guiding and remembering what the precepts are and doing our best to keep to them. But I feel it's helpful to see that it's not a law imposed from outside that's sort of controlling what we kind of quote unquote really are, but rather the precepts are there to help us, as I was saying earlier, just to draw upon that fundamental wisdom, that fundamental purity of heart, that guna Dhamma, that motivation that is there when the heart is free of greed, hatred, and delusion. That's what we're drawing upon. So the taking on of the precepts, the shaving of the head, putting on the robes, and that it's in a way it's a reminder. It's like, remember what you are. Remember what's inside this. Remember what you really care about. Remember what's true, what's real. Remember that. Let that be what guides you. Let that be what is referred to. Let that be the abiding principle. And that's why every 2 weeks we have these formal recollections. We recite the precepts. We have the recitation of the nuns' rules, the monks' rules, the novices' precepts, the Anagārika precepts. That we're consciously reminding ourselves of these principles to help us to awaken, and to embody that quality of the heart, to know that the heart is Dhamma, the citta is Dhamma, and that when life is lived from that basis, then that it's the process of living a monastic life. It's not a constant set of frustrations or limitations. I shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that, shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that. Rather, as the practice is developed, more and more naturally, the heart is motivated by those fundamental principles. You're learning to listen and to be guided more and more by that which cannot act out of violence. It cannot act out of dishonesty. It can't act out of greed or out of the urges towards self-advantage. Also, taking on the Anagārika precepts, it's according to the standards and customs of our community, it's a year-long commitment. And this is, say, a resolution, a determination, an adhitthana, that it's an experiment and taken on for the period of a year. And I feel that's a very important thing, another aspect that's significant and important to take to heart. And we set that boundary, that commitment, as a way to train ourselves, and so that we use the word temple for this building, and as Luang Por Sumedho would often point out, a templum in sort of the classical world, there's a Latin word meaning a boundary, a sacred space, which would, in the ancient times, would be used for reading auguries or telling fortunes, so that you'd set up a templum, and then the soothsayers, the astrologers, and the diviners would then watch what happened within that templum to see what birds appeared, or what animals came, or what events happened, and then you would sort of read what was the true nature of things, or what's a good way forward, what's a good way to deal with the situation by what occurred within the templum. So the word temple then has become a word we use in English to define a kind of a sacred space. And just like this physical temple that we're in right now, this is a sacred space where we meet and where we practice meditation, where we use as a particular spot to develop the spiritual qualities that are beneficial. So the determination to live on the 8 precepts, to be an Anagārika for a year, that's a templum, that's a defined boundary. And then just as you create the boundary and then you look and see what happens, you learn from what occurs within that space. It's a sacred space because it's being looked upon and used in order to develop spiritual qualities, sacred qualities, to awaken to and to embody the sacred. So I feel that it's important to take that determination seriously, and that commitment, that boundary, then it's like a vehicle. It's a form that is used. Like, this particular temple is a building. It's a resolution like that to say, I'm going to do this for a year. It's a sacred space. It's also like a vehicle insofar as, okay, this is something that's going to help carry me through the year. And like a vehicle, like a boat on the sea, it's a good vessel that will help us to be able to endure the calm weather and the stormy weather. So during the course of the year, then I'm sure there'll be times that are very pleasant and delightful, and there'll be times that are really difficult and challenging. And so that the commitment to the 8 precepts and living as an Anagārika, that's a vessel to contain your energies and your life as a human being through this year, and to be serious about that commitment. And to help as keeping the vessel leak-proof and well ordered, so that it can be something that weathers the storms, can be reliable, and can help carry you through the stormy times as well as the pleasant and comfortable times, and so that that quality of resolution, like any kind of commitment, any kind of promise that we make, or like when people get married, it's like you make marriage vows, and for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health. I feel that there's a very skillful and ancient human customs that have come down through the centuries for very good reasons. So taking on the Anagārika life, it's not a lifetime commitment, it's a commitment for 1 year, but in a similar way, it's a promise, it's a resolution. And you make the resolution because it's not always going to be easy, it's not always going to be comfortable. And so you sort of, it's like making a firm, a good solid vessel. You're making sure it hasn't got too many leaks in it. You're making sure that all the panels of the boat are put together in a good way, and it's going to float on the water, and it's going to survive the stormy weather, so that it will serve well. It'll fulfill its purpose, and that if we are irresolute, or we don't take these things seriously, then as soon as things get difficult or there's intense mind states, then it's rather like you haven't done a very good job of putting the boat together. And there's a few of the planks are loose. There's a few holes, and it gets very leaky, and then falls apart in the stormy weather, or even in the mild weather. if you build a boat very, very poorly, and we find ourselves not able to keep any kind of objectivity or clarity in relationship to the intense mind states, and that there can be things that are very painful or very very challenging, or it can be that it can be to do with opinions and views, like after 6 weeks, you suddenly realize, I don't really need Buddhism. I don't need a teacher. I'm a fully enlightened being already. I don't need this. I'm off. You say, well, okay. Well, I might feel like I'm a fully enlightened being today. I might feel I don't need to shave my head or wear these robes, but I did make a promise to live as an Anagārika for a year. So perhaps I'll maintain my commitment, and then see whether I'm still enlightened tomorrow, or whether things have changed again. I'm not making any predictions or judgments about where Philippe might be at, but these things do happen. And so that then it can be like easily the case that a week later, I don't think I'm enlightened after all. And so this is actually very helpful to enable me to maintain a perspective on my loves and hates. That if I was really enlightened, I wouldn't be getting angry with the Ajahn, or I wouldn't be fantasizing about food all the way through the evening meditation. Like that's not what an arahant's mind would go to, I suspect. So that you use that framework as a way to look at those ups and downs, the feelings of inspiration, feelings of desperation. And you're using that form of the 8 precepts as a templum, as a framework in which to look at love and hate, gain and loss, praise and criticism, comfort and discomfort, and to get to know how they work. It's a vehicle to help make that journey into the mind, and to know how the mind works, to explore that territory of the heart, the mind, and to see what it is, how it works, and to understand it more and more completely. And through that understanding, then to bring about those qualities of say freedom of heart, and the qualities of true contentment and ease. When we talk about the qualities of the Buddha, often we focus upon aspects like wisdom or compassion, and or the Buddha's skill as a teacher. But another one of the suttas that I feel is very significant and carries an important message is called the Mahagosinga Sutta, and it talks about a beautiful night in the forest, and in a monastery in the Gosinga forest, Gosinga solitary forest, the Buddha was living with a number of the enlightened members of the Bhikkhu Sangha. And it starts off with, I think it's Venerable Ananda, who looks out into the forest and says, "Oh, this is a beautiful moonlit night, and the scent of the flowers of the sala trees is filling the air, and the moonlight is washing through the forest and shining on all the leaves, and it's as if it's a paradise, a heavenly place. What kind of a monk would illuminate the forest on a night like this?" And then he goes to his friend, Venerable Sariputta, and says, "Venerable Sariputta, what kind, this is the Gosinga forest is filled with beautiful scents, and the moonlight is illuminating the forest, and as if it's a heavenly zone. What kind of a monk do you think would illuminate the forest on a night like this?" And then Sariputta says, "Well, the kind of monk that can enter any kind of state of meditation that they choose in the morning or the afternoon and the evening, and they can have complete mastery over their meditation." And then then they go and visit the different great elders who are living there, Venerable Mahamoggallana and Mahakassapa, Anuruddha. And each one of them, the example they give is their own speciality. So it's a kind of unique a unique situation when all of these great beings kind of emphasize the areas that they have developed. Like Venerable Anuruddha says, a monk who can see into all of the different realms of existence and has complete mastery over the divine eye. The Mahakassapa talks about the one who has developed all of the Dhutangas, who has a life that is extremely austere and simple, and so on and so forth. And then after there's about half a dozen of them have spoken in this way, they say, "Well, let's go and speak to the master. Let's go and pay our respects to the Buddha and see what he says with respect to this." And so they go to the Buddha, and then they say, "Venerable Sir, the Gosinga Sala tree wood is filled with scents, and the flowers are all in bloom, and the moonlight is shining through the forest and illuminating it like a heavenly realm. What kind of a monk do you think would illuminate the forest on a night like this?" And then the Buddha says, the kind of monk that would sit down and says, "I will not move from this spot until I have realized full and complete enlightenment." That's the kind of monk that would illuminate the forest on a night like this. So when in that theme of the sutta, when each one is talking about their own kind of speciality, their own sort of area of that they focused upon or developed to fulfillment, it's adhitthana that the Buddha speaks about. It's resolution that he sort of points to as his most significant characteristic. And again, that might be just my interpretation. It's not the only way to read that sutta. But I do feel it's very significant that of all the different qualities and characteristics that the Buddha had fully developed all the 10 paramitas to the ultimate degree, it's resolution that adhitthana is the quality that he highlights and says that's the the abiding principle. It also matches his resolution as a bodhisattva, that through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, sustaining that resolution to keep developing the paramitas until Buddhahood is realized. But also in this his last lifetime, that the resolution to not move from the spot under the Bodhi tree until full and complete enlightenment was realized. So to me, it does point to that quality of resolution is a very significant, a highly significant aspect of the Buddha principle. So we might think of awakenedness or wisdom or kindness and compassion are the chief characteristics. But I do feel it's significant that what he points to himself is adhitthana, is resolution, determination, as his sort of the linchpin or the most dominant or significant aspect of his practice, at least in that particular sutta. And so that when we are dealing with intense mind states and the mind is really miserable or sad or lonely or confused and filled with strange imagery or weird states, and aditana is the mind that says, "Don't wobble. This is a mind state. Don't be confused. This is if it's arisen, it has to pass away, and this is intrinsically anicca, dukkha, anatta. It cannot not be anicca, dukkha, anatta. It has to be, no matter how intense, how strange, how difficult, how challenging, how exciting, how wonderful. This has to be anicca, dukkha, anatta. There's no way it cannot be." And so that resolution, in a sense, is it's what enables that quality of insight and wisdom to stay open, stay alert and attentive to the flow of mind states, no matter how challenging, exciting, irritating, compelling, painful, or delightful they might be. It's that don't wobble. Just be awake, pay attention, and that is so helpful in terms of what we've undertaken here, taking these precepts, living this life as we do together, either as a layperson or as a resident here at Amaravati, as a Anagārika, a Samanera, Silatara, as a bhikkhu, the resident lay people who've made their own commitments to be living here, to be committing themselves to the practice. Also around and about, people are in their own homes and around the world in different monasteries and different communities. That resolution, that commitment to Dhamma. When we take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, there's no reason why that taking of refuge, even though those words are maybe even recited in a kind of automatic or semi-conscious way, like Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi, and you get sort of 3 words in and your mind is already drifting off. But when we recite those words, Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi, Dhammang Saranam Gacchāmi, Sanghang Saranam Gacchāmi, there's no reason why we can't recite those words with the same quality of aditana, of resolution, of like, this is the intention, that the Buddha is the refuge, the Dhamma is the refuge, the Sangha is the refuge. That is the direction, that's the commitment, that's the determination that's being made here, that despite all of the many distractions and compulsions and habits, right, Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi, I take refuge, I go to the Buddha for refuge, I go to the Dhamma for refuge, I go to the Sangha for refuge. And that the more there is a quality of genuine resolution and determination in that going for refuge, then the more those refuges are embodied. The heart embodies those qualities of being Dhamma, being Buddha, being Sangha, being awake, being an embodiment of nature, and being an embodiment of the good, the true, and the noble. So I offer these thoughts for consideration on this auspicious day, and particularly wishing the new Anagārika Philippe well, and every blessing for his year's commitment.